everyone to our Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference Forum. Today's forum is entitled A New Majority for DC Statehood. I'm particularly grateful to all of our speakers for attending. I want to move first to the distinguished member from the Senate, Senator Ben Cardin, who has been kind enough to join us, even though he's in the midst of a Senate session that is of extraordinary importance to the district and to the country. He has been a representative here in Congress, so he knows what I'm about, and he has been a member of the Maryland House of Representatives. Welcome, Senator Cardin.
Well, to my good friend, Eleanor Holmes Norton, thank you so much for your extraordinary leadership on behalf of the people of the district. Look, I think you're doing a great job, but it doesn't diminish the fact that there is no justification whatsoever for the denial of the rights and representation for the 700,000 citizens of the District of Columbia that statehood would give them their full constitutional representation that they should have. And I wanted to be on this call to just let you know that your friends from Maryland and from around the nation recognize that this is a basic denial of human rights, and it has to be corrected. And we strongly support statehood from the point of view of what's right for this nation. Let's right or wrong and give the people of the district their full representation in the Congress of the United States. I serve as the chair of the U.S. Helsinki Commission. I think Representative Norton, you know about the work that we do in the Helsinki Commission. And we made certain commitments in 1975 for basic human rights. And quite frankly, we have brought up before the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the fact that the United States is violating one of those basic commitments by denying the people of the district the right to have full representation in the United States Congress. It is a violation of international human rights. It's a violation of our own commitments. So this is an issue I feel very passionately about. And I want you to know I will continue to speak out to make sure the people of the district get their full representation through statehood. And anything I can do, I can tell you, we're going to be on your side. I'm on the Eleanor Holmes Norton team to get this done any way we can.
Thank you so much, Senator Cardin. And I note with great pleasure that we've already had a hearing in the Senate. We know that the Senate that Democrats got control of the Senate in part because of the filibuster. I hope you're making headway on that, and I very much appreciate the progress that we're making in the Senate on DC statehood.
We are making progress. We're getting things done. We're moving ahead with President Biden's Build Back Better. And when we build back better, it also means making sure that every person in this country has their full rights, and that means DC statehood.
I very much thank you, Senator Cardin, for taking time from a session that is of utmost importance to the country, to Maryland, and especially to the district, to join us. And I know you're headed back to the floor of the Senate. Let me thank you again for being with us. Thank you, Senator Cardin.
My pleasure. And you know, you have me on your team. Let me know what we can do to help. Stay well.
Thank you. That was terrific that the senator was willing to leave the floor to keep his commitment to be a part of our CBC annual legislative conference. Our other two speakers are, of course, equally important to us. So I want to go next to Justin Vail, who has come to us from the administration. He is Special Assistant to the President of the United States for Democracy and Civic Participation. Justin Vail, please talk to us about DC statehood.
Thank you for having me here for this wonderful event. The administration always enjoys the opportunity to participate. And I want to thank you, Congresswoman, for your leadership on this historic effort. I will keep my remarks relatively brief because the point I want to make today is very straightforward. The Biden-Harris administration strongly supports HR 51 and admitting the DC as a state to this union. President Biden has always been a strong supporter of DC statehood, and he urges his Congress to send the bill to his desk so he can sign it into law and provide the 700,000 Americans who live in DC with equal voting rights and long overdue representation in Congress, just like their neighbors all across the country. This status quo that we have today, the status quo of taxation without representation and the denial of self-government, it's an affront to the very democratic values on which this nation was founded. So this is an issue of fundamental fairness, of voting rights, of racial justice. And as we saw with the events of January 6th, where insurrectionists sought to overturn the will of the people and overturn a duly certified election by assaulting our Capitol, this is an issue of the district's safety, of the people of DC should have their own, be able to preserve their own safety just as any other state does. I want to say that Congress has the authority to right this wrong. Congress has broad authority to admit DC through simple legislation, just as it did when admitting all 37 other states that were not part of the original 13 colonies, becoming the original 13 states. So we've heard some arguments against admitting DC statehood that frankly are ridiculous, and we want to talk about those right now. Because establishing Washington, D.C. as the 51st state will make our union stronger. It will make our democracy stronger. D.C. has a robust economy, it has a rich culture, and has a diverse population of Americans from all walks of life who are all entitled to the full and equal participation in our democracy. So the administration calls for Congress to provide swift, orderly, long overdue transition to statehood for the people of Washington, D.C. And the Biden-Harris administration is going to continue working with you and our friends in the Senate to get this done. So thank you for allowing me to represent the administration today. And again, thank you for your tireless leadership and devotion to this important effort.
Thank you very much, Justin Vale, for those remarks, which were very informative and indicated such strong support of the President of the United States for DC statehood. I want to go next to Stasha Rhodes of 51 for 51, the organization which has been so helpful to the District of Columbia as we have continued to fight for DC statehood. 51 for 51 represents a coalition of organizations for DC statehood. And I want to give the floor to Stasha Rhodes at this time, campaign director for 51 for 51.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, for inviting me to join this panel. And most importantly, for being our consistent warrior on the Hill for so very long. Your leadership and tenacity does not go unnoticed. We are so very grateful to be a part of this movement with you. And to the other amazing panelists today, just incredibly strong statements from Senator Cardin and from Justin. Very grateful to join them on this panel today. 51 for 51 is a DC statehood campaign focused on making DC the 51st state with 51 votes in the Senate. So in other words, ensuring that the Senate filibuster isn't an obstacle to representation for over 700,000 mostly Black and brown people of Washington, D.C. We started at 51 for 51 about 2.5 years ago and made a serious decision to make the political realities of the U.S. Senate a part of our public advocacy. It is our view that the Senate has, as an institution, has serious issues. Currently, the 50 Democratic senators represent 43 million more people than the 50 Republican senators. Throughout our country's history, there's only been 11 African-American senators. Senator Warnock of Georgia is the 11th. There's an entire part of our country that has no representation in the Senate at all. And of course, that's Washington, D.C. To top it all off, the Jim Crow filibuster stands in the way of so many priorities the American people care about, including DC statehood. The fight for statehood has come quite a long way. And now, because of the leadership of Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton and so many advocates, we're now closer than ever before. Too close, in fact, to be stopped by a procedural hurdle in the Senate. To many, DC statehood is a fine talking point. They support it and it's great, but it's too much of a pipe dream to actually do the work to make it a reality. When I think about that, I often think about Dr. King saying that change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. Washington residents are completely locked out of the democracy that operates in its backyard. Right now, there's a national conversation happening about voting rights, specifically the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But DC residents have no vote on either bill. It is an incomplete effort if we're not also elevating DC statehood and the residents who deserve full voting rights. The fight for our democracy is too important to piecemeal and certainly too important to delay. I am incredibly honored to be in this fight with Congresswoman Norton and look forward to progress sooner and much progress this year. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Stasha Rhodes. Those remarks were very encouraging. I guess I should start with you and ask you about recent polling in support of DC statehood or on DC statehood. Do you have any further information on that?
Yeah, we've done consistent polling on this, as you know, Congresswoman. We started in 2019. In 2019 doing polling. We've seen consistent elevation of the polling since 2019. We've done 3 polls and seen support for DC statehood rise at least ridiculously 12 points overall. I think the thing that's most important for the polling that we've seen is that when people learn about DC statehood, they support it. And the thing that we learned from you early in this fight is that most people are unaware of the fight for DC statehood. They think about Washington, DC, they think of the Capitol and the White House and the mall and monuments, but they don't often think about the 700,000 people mostly disconnected from politics who don't have congressional representation despite the fact that they pay federal taxes. And we've just seen consistent increase in polling for DC residents.
We are very encouraged by that polling. Is that 54%?
It's 54. I'm sorry, I neglected to say the number. It is 54%. Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's over half of the American people already for DC statehood. I want to go next to Justin Vail. I very much appreciate the support of the president. You heard her say we at a figure of 54% of the American people supporting DC statehood. Is there, given the kind of support we're building, is there more that the administration could be doing given its strong support for DC statehood?
First, I want to reaffirm the president's support for this important issue. And we understand the stakes. We know that we will never be a true democracy until all Americans are able to fully participate in the democratic process. And so when we hear 54%, that is heartening. Unfortunately, these days, there's not all that much that more than half of Americans can agree with. But I think if we all continue to make this a case across the country of what rights are being denied, and that fellow Americans, frontline workers, service members, the families that make up the district are being denied these rights, I think that support can increase not decrease. And we all need to continue to talk to the American public about what this means and why these rights can no longer be denied.
Well, nothing is more valuable than this strong support we have from the President of the United States. I'm going to go to Sasha Rhodes once more and ask her about which arguments resonate most with Americans. For example, we stress here that DC residents pay the highest taxes per capita. It seemed to me that that ought to be a slam dunk for DC statehood. But, you know, there are other arguments as well. Have you had any sense in 51 for 51, which kinds of issues or arguments speak loudest as you continue to press for DC statehood?
Well, obviously, as always, you nailed it. Probably the most often the support we get, often we talk about the federal taxes. It is always the number one thing that resonates with people. I think the other thing, though, that many Americans support and talk often about as it relates to DC statehood is just the ability to have representation in the Senate on the issues that matter most to them, whether it's reproductive rights or gun violence prevention or voting rights. They're often stunned to learn that so many people in Washington, D.C. have no vote in the Senate on those issues at all. And to live in our country and have 700,000 people silenced in the US Senate, in one of the most important bodies, governing bodies of our country, or of the world, honestly, and have no representation there is really stunning to many people in our country. And I think Justin said it best, is that we can no longer call ourselves a true democracy if we are not including all Americans in our democracy. And that is one of the things that we found Americans outside of Washington, D.C. have certainly supported.
I have one question each for each of you before we close this forum. Justin, the support of the President of the United States is nothing short of invaluable. There are many arguments that people don't even know about. I just discussed one with Sasha Rhodes, pay the highest taxes per capita. I wonder if you, working for the administration as a strong supporter of DC statehood, would consider using social media or elsewhere to broadcast some of the other reasons DC should be a state. For example, that our population is larger than that of 2 states, that we pay more federal taxes, that we have more federal taxes than 21 states, that our bond rating is greater than 32 states. Does your office have a way to get some of those on social media if we were to send them to you so that the public could understand underlying reasons that the president supports DC statehood?
Absolutely. Congresswoman, we are with you and the 700,000 residents of Washington to get this done. And we're going to continue working with you and Senator Cardin and other colleagues in the Senate to talk about why this needs to happen, the moral imperative, because it is part of our never-ending work to build a more perfect union and to achieve the ideals of the founding fathers. So it is good to hear that point. It is good to hear what arguments resonate. And we want to continue this conversation with you to keep advancing this historic, important legislation. So thank you again for your partnership with us.
Well, I very much appreciate, Justin, your willingness to continue to work with us. through the president's office. Finally, let me ask Stasha Rhodes about your work. You have been instrumental in getting us to 54%. That is an extraordinary number. My question to you is there any way, anything we can do or anyone else can do that you think can raise that number, that remarkable number that your analysis shows we've already attained?
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, Congresswoman. I will say that, one, it is really important that as we have this conversation about voting rights, that we're not just saying HR 1 and HR 4, but that we're also adding HR 51. That the fight for voting rights should be a three-leg stool, and we should include DC statehood. We want to make sure that if we're talking about democracy, that we're not leaving out residents of Washington, DC. So in saying HR 1, HR 4, don't leave out DC statehood. For the people means all of the people, is what I will say to that first part. I think the other thing that I will say is really the importance of making sure that residents of Washington are able to tell the stories of the people that live in DC. That this isn't just Washington, this isn't a town of politics, but they are nurses, doctors, teachers who are the front lines of the pandemic, librarians, who live right here in Washington, DC, that are disconnected from the lobbyists and the press, although those folks also deserve representation, that we should be lifting up the stories of Washingtonians as often as possible. And we found that it's something that many people don't know the stories of those people, and it's really, really important that Americans learn those.
Thank you, Stasha. And let me thank you both, Justin Vale and Stasha Rhodes, for the extraordinary work you are doing for DC statehood. This forum will get added feature well beyond the usual recognition it gets from me, because you have been a part of our Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference. That's why it means so much to me that you have been willing to come forward to speak to this broader national forum that will reach many more people on DC statehood, in a forum which we have titled A New Majority for DC Statehood. So as I close, let me thank you both once again, Justin Vale, Special Assistant to the President for Democracy and Civic Participation, and Stasha Rhodes of the organization 51 for 51. Thank you both for being with us today. You have been enormously helpful to us in getting this message out.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. And thank you for your work, Congresswoman Stasha. It was good to see you.
Thank you, Justin.
Okay. Thank you very much.